Fantastic. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening for the Knowledge Fellowship Seminar Series October edition. This is our fifth seminar series, the series of workshops slash seminars slash roundtables slash presentations that we've had from our fantastic educational streamers in the Knowledge Fellowship. We're doing this series of events to help promote and spotlight all of these great educational streamers that we have. If you were watching the intro that we had during the going live section, you saw a fantastic list of some amazing people, some of which you might have recognized, names that you might have seen because they're well-respected names in their field. So I feel sort of out of place sometimes in the group, but I'm very glad to be here and having the opportunity to chat with people like Archie Chickadee and Moohoodles and Star Strider, Tiny Toxic Tofu, Volcano Doc, fantastic individuals that we've had the opportunity to learn a lot from and to spread the good word of educational edutainment, informative live streaming, stuff that's a little bit different from all of the, well, let's just call it the slop that is out there on Twitch, on TikTok, on YouTube. And for those of you who have been supporting this group and all of the educational live streamers that are out there, thank you very much, because you could be watching anything in the world right now. You could be watching Subway Surfers overlaid on some Roblox video, but you're here watching and supporting educational stuff, something that will enrich you at least a little bit. So we really appreciate it. And I really appreciate all of the great work of those who have been supporting and crafting the Knowledge Fellowship throughout all these years. And I'm very happy to be a part of that now and be able to do some work for it, be on this committee and to help promote and spotlight this group and to do what we're doing now with the seminar series and take a very active role in hopefully spotlighting all of these individuals. And I would love to, in the future, the goal for this is to find those educational streamers that are doing great work, having great content, but they just need someone to give them that hand up and shine a spotlight on what they're doing, because it can be very hard to break through in this sphere of live streaming. Because like I said, there are so many things that people could be watching, that they could be playing, that they could be doing. But if you are interested in educational streaming, you should check out the Knowledge Fellowship Stream Team. It's available in the About section for my channel, for this channel. There is always someone in that group streaming something fantastic, educational, informative. So check that out. Not right now, watch this for now, but afterwards, check out any number of people from that group. And if you are an educational streamer or you have an interest in streaming educational content, you should check out the Knowledge Fellowship Discord. Join that Discord, apply to the group. We would love to have you. We would love to see your content and help promote you. So you don't need to be an expert. You don't need to have a doctorate. You don't need to be a teacher. If you have an interest or an expertise in something that you have experience with and you like to spread that, you like to teach people about things, we would love to have you. And if you're just looking to discuss and chat with people, join that Discord. There's conversation that you can have with people like Nerduino. There are people with years and years of experience that you can learn from, that you can talk to, ask questions of. So that's my little spiel. I wanted to get that out of the way early so that we can move on to this discussion that I'm going to have with Nerduino. We have not met before. I have not had the chance to talk to you before, so this is all new to me. So let's start with the basics. Who are you? Because I don't know you yet.
Well, thanks for the intro. Yeah, and I'm excited to be here and to chat with you, and excited to be in the company of so many great streamers who've come before. The list of names is pretty impressive, and Twitch ambassadors amongst those, and all kinds of cool scientists. So I'm Nerduino or Ian, whichever you prefer. I have been streaming on Twitch. I think I'm coming up on, I want to say 4 years in April or something like that. My background is in astrophysics and astronomy. I have a PhD from University of Illinois, and after I had finished there, I worked at NASA for about 10 years on different projects, which I'm sure we'll talk about later. But yeah, and now I stream on Twitch Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays, and also make YouTube content. I try and put out at least 3 YouTube videos a week. It was daily for a while, but it just got to be too much. So yeah, I put out three YouTube videos a week on some space topic, usually topical, like within a story from within the last week or two. Sometimes even that day, depends. But I try and keep it fresh. So yeah.
Yeah. So I did get the chance to read some of your bio and check out some of your content. Let's start with the beginning. You mentioned basically from Cambridge to Wall Street to astronomy. Let's start there because that's a pretty interesting foundation. What inspired such a drastic shift from the finance world to astrophysics?
Yeah, so I was always interested in science, right? So I did engineering. I studied engineering at Cambridge, or I went to Cambridge to study engineering. I actually studied engineering for 2 years. Um, and then they had this new thing that they had just, I think I was the first year or the second year where they had this management studies tripos, which is basically just split into 3 years, right? So you could do this final year in management studies and economics and all this other stuff. And I thought, well, that sounds kind of interesting. I wasn't really sure what kind of engineering I wanted to do, so I was like, well, I can sit on the fence and get some learn about some other things and see what happens. And yeah, that kind of led me down a slightly odd, like, yeah, into investment banking. And I worked for, I don't know if I should say the name, probably get things thrown at me, but I worked for Goldman Sachs for about 5 years, um, and in the London office and then in the Tokyo office. And it was really interesting. I was working in risk management, so it was mathematics, and we built these risk models, and it was kind of interesting. Um, but and living in Japan was amazing. I mean, I was there for a couple of years, and that was really cool. I really enjoyed living in Tokyo. Amazing city and super amazing people. And people in my chat have heard this story 1,000 times. So sorry if I'm repeating for
It's new to
everyone
me.
there
It's
who's
new to
heard it.
me.
But yeah. So we I got friendly. I had always been interested in astronomy, and I had telescopes and stuff. And then living in Japan, I found this telescope shop in, I think it was in Shinjuku, and I got talking with the owner of the telescope shop who spoke some English, and between his English and my poor Japanese, we managed to communicate. And they sort of took me under their wing and used to take me on these observing trips up to Mount Fuji. There's a parking lot about halfway up Mount Fuji where they would set up their telescopes, and they were all really into astrophotography. And this was in the early days of like CCD cameras for astrophotography and all this cool stuff. Um, and yeah, I just really fell in love with the astronomy again, and I kind of wanted to see if I could pursue it somehow. I knew that it was going to be difficult because I knew getting back into school after 5 years away, especially to follow a PhD, was not gonna wasn't going to be easy. And then I happened to meet, there was an astrophysicist who was visiting Tokyo who I had got chatting with. He was a professor at UCSD, yeah, UCSD, and he was doing a sabbatical in Tokyo at a university there, and we just got to talking. And I kind of said to him, "Well, do you think it would be possible, or is it just kind of dumb to try and pursue this?" I knew, like in the UK, I knew it was very typical just to go straight from undergrad to a PhD, and you weren't like there having a gap would be weird. And it's probably changed now, but in the '90s, that was kind of how the system had always worked, and you didn't really go back to school. You finished what you were doing, and then you kind of live with your choices. But he's like, yeah, I think you could find a school, and you'd have to take the GRE, and you'd have to prove that you had the background, but I think you could do it. And so that's kind of how that all started. And then he kind of helped me with some schools to apply to, and um, yeah, it was just, and so it kind of just snowballed into this thing where all of a sudden I was quitting Goldman Sachs to go live in the middle of Illinois, in Champaign-Urbana, in a, what to me at the time felt like, I mean, it's a decent sized town, but it felt like a pretty tiny place compared to living in Tokyo and London. And yeah, it was an interesting time. It was a challenging transition, but I mean, I'm super glad that I did it. And I definitely enjoyed the investment banking. I enjoyed the time, and I got to work with some very smart people. But I never really regretted, other than financially, I never really regretted the decision. Yeah. So
Yeah, I mean, at least it's not McKinsey or BlackRock or something. I mean, that might get you a little bit more eggs and tomatoes, pelting you.
yeah.
Uh, but yeah, to go from two of the biggest cities in the world to, I'm not too far from Illinois, so I know that's sort of a change for sure. But yeah, and then you mentioned just encountering a person. Sometimes that's just how it works. You have a chance encounter with the right person who can put you on the right path. So very, very fortuitous. Yeah. You then of course get to NASA. Let's skip ahead to NASA because that's what I'm sure a lot of people are going to want to hear who don't know you yet. They see a cap that says NASA on your head. So
Oh,
let's
I
talk
didn't even
about.
realize. I should be. My wife is going to be here. Hold on. Let me take that
Oh
one off. I'm
no,
going to put this one on.
I
Yeah.
yeah. So I'm in Wisconsin. I'm from Wisconsin. I went to UW. So
Uh-huh.
three-time Badger.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
You rah rah. Uh,
Well,
so obviously I'm a Brewers fan. I went to some Brewers games this year. Sorry about that. Wrigley North was not meant to be this year, so it's going to be the Brewers taking the series. However,
oh, okay. All right. I guess we'll
however,
see. Certainly seems to be off to a poor start for the Cubs, but we'll see.
yeah, there were some arrests at the stadium. That's just how it is. But yeah, NASA. You go from initially going to do finance stuff or engineering, then you're working at NASA. How's that? How's that feel walking in the door the first time for your first day of work at NASA?
You know, it's probably going to sound really weird, but to me, it was just another like it was just a place to do research. It fit with my thesis, my graduate student work had been on the cosmic microwave background, and this is the relic radiation from the Big Bang that we can measure. And there was an ESA mission that was flying at the time, or about to launch at the time, when I was sort of finishing my PhD to study exactly that. And so the US data center for the Planck mission was at JPL. And so it was like a collaboration. It was pretty much an ESA mission, but the US was helping with the data analysis, the data storage, and the supercomputing facilities at the National Energy Research Council and that kind of stuff. And so I had got this NRC fellowship to which I think they're called something slightly different now, but anyway, it's basically a fellowship, and they paid for they essentially paid your salary and your benefits, and you could go to any institution that would take it. You had to apply and obviously be like, hey, I want to come and work in your department, but you were essentially a free resource to the place you were going to. So you had a pretty good chance of wherever you were asking to go saying yes, because who doesn't want free labor, right? But as it happened, a jet propulsion lab was working on Planck, so it was a natural. And I'd already been working on some Planck stuff, and so it was a natural fit. And I was working with people who I already knew from the research for my thesis, and so it didn't feel like this huge transition. It just felt like doing the same work but in a different place. And so I don't know. That probably seems weird to people. They're like, "Oh my god, you're working at NASA," and this. It kind of has this huge reputation, but at the end of the day, the JPL is more the people than it is the the name and the buildings and all this other stuff, right? So it was again another big culture shock, right? Moving to California from the Midwest, moving to LA, living close to the lab, in a huge city. So there was all that side of it. But the actual thing with NASA, I never really felt that. I'm probably just too dumb to feel the weight of like the expectations, and, the sort of uh, how many other people would love to have the opportunity that I had. And it's not that I didn't appreciate the opportunity. At 1,000%, 100% did, and I really enjoyed the work that I did there. But yeah, I don't know that I had uh, a real feeling for the effect that it has when you tell people you worked at NASA, I guess. Because to me, it was I was just doing research and I was working at NASA. I worked at Caltech, and it was just what I did. And and now, as you said, when you say that to people, they're like, "Oh my god, you worked at NASA." And I don't know. I'm not being very articulate, but
No, that it does sort of make sense when uh, it's what you've sort of been expecting. You're going in to do research, and there you go. You're doing research with these, obviously, I'm sure, just amazing people with, you know, fantastic
oh yeah,
opportunities to work with them. And that's probably what you get focused on right away is, you're thrust into the working world. Uh, but speaking of that, speaking of the work that you were doing, cosmic microwave background, we'll say that term, and then a lot of people are going to be like, wow, that sounds really important, but what is it? So can you give me, as a non-specialist, why is that so important to cosmology?
So big picture, it is this radiation that was kind of frozen into the fabric of the universe about 300,000 years after the Big Bang, and uh, it's fairly uniform to sort of a first approximation when you looked at it. And when they looked at it originally, they discovered it accidentally. Penzias and Wilson, two guys called Penzias and Wilson, were using this telescope, a radio, yeah, a radio telescope, and they had this signal in there that they couldn't figure out where it's coming from. They like cleaned the pigeons out, and they spent all this time trying to find out where the systematics were until they finally realized that what they were listening to or what they were receiving was this signal from the cosmic microwave background. Um, and fast forward 50 years, we figured out ways of actually looking at it at much higher resolution. And when you get to small enough scales, it turns out there are these little fluctuations in the temperature. So it's not a perfectly smooth background. And by measuring these small fluctuations, we think that these small fluctuations that are frozen into the cosmic microwave background are the seeds of structure formation in the universe. So by studying the different scales of these structures in the CMB, we can predict what the universe should look like, and we can predict the parameters. So I don't know if you're familiar with this. So there's these cosmological models, right? We have these concordance cosmological models that have like 10, let's say 10 parameters in them. And you can use the CMB to constrain those parameters and tell you what the universe should look like today. And then the neat thing about that is you can go out and look at the universe today, and you can be like, oh yeah, either it does fit that model or it doesn't fit that model. And um, there's all this talk recently about this, like the crisis in cosmology, and how it doesn't seem as though um, the observations that we're making currently in the current epoch, right? So we're looking at things that aren't that far away, just maybe a few tens of light years away. um, and those agree with what we get from the cosmic microwave background, or do they not? And if they don't, why don't they? And why has the universe not evolved how we thought it should have from the CMB all the way back to the present day, or forward to the present day, depending on. So yeah, and so the CMB is a sort of critical tool for cosmology. There's been three. So there was COBE, which was a satellite mission that was the first to measure the fluctuations, and that was so George Smoot worked on that. He just passed away recently in the last couple of weeks. They won the Nobel Prize for that, and then there was a mission called WMAP, which was a NASA mission, a US mission, which measured the CMB with more precision, and then Planck came later again, and that measured the CMB with even greater precision and with some polarization information. So the higher the resolution of your maps, the sort of more detail you can get, and the better you can constrain these cosmological parameters in your model. Um, and the part of that I worked on. So the problem that we have is we're observing the cosmic microwave background through the disk of the galaxy, right? Or through in some cases we're looking 360 degrees. So sometimes we're looking up out of the plane of the galaxy, which is good. There's not a lot of foregrounds there. But for a sort of 20-degree plus or minus band across the sky, we have this huge signal from the galaxy that just swamps. We're looking for temperature fluctuations on the order of 1 part in 10 to the 5. So a 10,000th of a Kelvin is the fluctuation that we're trying to measure. And you can imagine that when you're staring through the galaxy, that's just you've got no chance. And so to try and get as much information as possible, we want to remove those foregrounds we want to remove the galaxy from the data as best we can. And but what we don't really want to do is just apply a mask, right? You could just mask out the galaxy, delete all the contaminated data, and then just use the rest. But then you're giving up a ton of information on scales of the size of the galaxy, roughly. So, so my research for like my PhD was focused on how can we remove. So there's like dust, right? There's thermal dust in the plane of the galaxy, which is emitting at the same frequency as the CMB. There's synchrotron radiation and free emission. So these are like this is radiation that comes from particles in magnetic fields, or particles interacting with, like electrons interacting with atomic nuclei. And so there's all these other so there's all these things that there's about 5 different foregrounds that you need to try and remove. And what we did was to come up with a model that could remove them in a way that allowed us to recreate possible versions of the galaxy. So we could recreate the sky where the galaxy was, and we could tell you that statistically this version of the sky would fit the model. And then we would just do simulations, and we would create thousands of such skies where we had um, a sky that would match the statistics of the rest of the CMB. So we couldn't tell you which one of those skies was like correct. What does our real sky look like? But we could create these ensemble averages, and then we could do statistical analysis using that simulated data. That was probably way more complicated than.
No, more information is better. More information is better. Yeah. So talked about both Beast and Planck. From what I understand, those are pretty dramatically different environments.
Oh, the experiments that I worked on.
Yeah. Can you tell me about
Oh
that a
yeah,
little bit?
so Beast was a really cool experiment from the University of California, Santa Barbara. A guy called Phil Lubin, he's a professor there, and Peter Meinholt and a group there. They had this telescope on White Mountain it's up in actually close to the Owens Valley Radio Observatory up there towards Bishop on the like on the mountains on the opposite side to the Sierra Nevada on the opposite side of the valley. And they'd been measuring the CMB from the ground, which, as you could imagine, that's a whole other bunch of foregrounds that you now have to deal with as well, because now you've got the atmosphere in addition to what you see from satellite. But anyway, I worked on that data, and we managed to extract we managed to extract the power spectrum, which is the thing that you are trying to. This is how you compare all these experiments, and you compare the sky. And so we did actually do a pretty good job getting some data out of that, because it was very low resolution. It was a small mirror from the surface of the Earth, and there's a bunch of other stuff. But it was a super cool thing, and it was a very small team, and we managed to get the result out before the WMAP. So I think BEAST stands for Background Emission Anisotropy Scanning Telescope. Uh, and yeah, I worked on that first. It's a chapter, it might even be 2 chapters in my thesis is around here somewhere. Someone was asking me about it the other day. I had it. Anyway, yeah, so I worked on BEAST, but that was sort of the tools that we were developing to do the analysis on BEAST were the same tools that we used for Planck. We just had to like scale them up, because obviously the Planck data set was much bigger than I could analyze the BEAST data on my computer in the astronomy department in Illinois. The Planck data we were running on supercomputers for thousands and thousands of CPU hours on parallel code, and it was a whole other thing. So, it was a good training ground. The BEAST experiment was a great learning experience, and we kind of got to develop our code. And then once we had the code and we used it for BEAST, then we could scale it up, parallelize it, and use it on the Planck data. And that took, 3 years or something. So it wasn't. I mean, it sounds easy, but and then there are. We ran into a bunch of different issues with the Planck data set, right? So that was like, yeah, just scale it up and parallelize it was 3 years of 3 years of
Yeah,
work.
you said it sounds easy. Well, not really. It doesn't sound easy to me. It might sound easy to people in that world, but that sounds pretty hard. But I'm also interested in some of this other work you mentioned. You talked about FPGA hardware work and working on lunar radio telescope proposals. So sort of a
Oh
variety
yeah.
of things that you've mentioned. So tell me about maybe a project you worked on that might surprise people. Things that they know the big headlines. They've heard of CMB. They've heard of Beast or Planck probably if
Mm.
they're interested in science. What's some of the non big headline stuff that you've thought was interesting that you've had the opportunity to work on?
Just one sec. Welcome in, Raiders. Tampa Hackerspace. Thank you for the raid. Um, yeah. So I worked on so Planck. I worked on Planck for roughly for about 5 years, I think. So but it was gradually winding down. Right, the data analysis, the the satellite was running out of coolant. So to make the measurements that we needed, the detectors had to be really cool, super cooled, and that coolant evaporates over time. And so eventually, once the instruments warmed up, that was kind of like, that was the end of the mission. And there was an extended mission, there was some other stuff, but the size of the team was gradually getting smaller and smaller as the funding was going away, and the science that we were doing was kind of being finished up, and the papers were being written and that kind of stuff. So then the way it works at JPL, what's my earbud? The way it works at JPL is you pretty much, so they kind of support you for the first. Oh, and so in between times, I'd gone from being a postdoc to being an employee at the lab. They kept me on after the postdoc, so that I was a postdoc for like 2 years, and then I've been what they call a technologist. So it's kind of a combination of a scientist and an engineer. And yeah, the way it works at JPL is they kind of support you for the first year, 1 to 3 years. They'll find work for you. They'll try and find projects. They'll hook you up with people. But at some point, you become responsible for sort of filling your own dance card and finding projects to work on who are looking for someone with your skill set, right? So you need to find sort of 90% of your time. So maybe a project is looking for some data analysis half time, and then you can find something else for a quarter time. You can sometimes get little research proposals funded where you can write a paper or do something interesting that might pay you for 25% of your time. But at the end of the day, you have to find sort of projects to work on, and you have to, or come up with your own ideas that you can get funded with grant money, or whatever. So after Planck, which I was paying 100% of my time for several years, then it's sort of, I started to branch out and fill my dance card, if you like, with other projects. And yeah, there was some super interesting stuff. So I guess there's probably two that people would be more interested in. The one was a project called DARE. It was the Dark Ages Radio Explorer, and it was a mission. It was a proposed mission to put a radio telescope on the far side of the moon. So the problem we have from the Earth with radio astronomy, of course, is just there's massive amounts of radio signals around that can contaminate your signal. The moon, it turns out, is extremely good at blocking radio signals. So if you put your radio telescope on the far side, you have a nice pristine environment where you can measure the early universe. And it was a really cool project. We didn't end up getting funded. It was an Explorer class mission, which I think is up to 150. I think the budget, we came in at about $100 million for this thing, including the launch and everything else. And we basically designed, so the JPL side of things, I managed the proposal and the actual writing, and then also we designed the radio antenna. And so it was just this, it was a receiver in the middle, and the antenna itself was just it was two dipoles, and these things had compressed air cartridges, and they were kind of like, the wacky waving inflatable arm flailing tube men. They were just like rolled up versions of those, and when the thing landed, the air would inflate these things and cause them to roll out, and then they would deflate, and you would have your two sets of antenna rolled out on the surface of the moon. So it was sort of a simple concept, but it was really interesting to work on, and I got to work with some of the mechanical engineers that were trying to figure out how to make that happen. And sometimes, as it was rolling out, it would like veer off to the side, so they had to try and kind of make it sure that it would roll out flat along the surface of the moon. And I mean now, those the people that worked on that are still working on similar projects, but now, of course, they're talking about maybe using astronauts to go up there and roll the thing out for them instead of having to do it autonomously, and also using craters on the moon to maybe create a dish for a radio array. There's all kinds of new stuff, but that was a super cool project. So there were 3 projects that were selected, and that was one of them, but only 2 were recommended for funding. So the two other projects were higher priority. So we didn't get funded, but it was a super fun thing to work on, and it was, I don't know, it was probably a year of development work and writing the proposal. And so that was sort of something that was really fun to be involved with, and was super interesting to see from a high level how these projects came together, how many different people were involved. And yeah, that was really good. And then I think the other thing that people would be interested in is and we were just talking about this on my stream the other day. Um, I went up to Winnipeg. We were flying out of Winnipeg testing a radiometer for a soil moisture satellite called SMAP, and it's still in operation. It basically flies around the Earth and it takes soil moisture measurements. Um, I think it covers the whole Earth twice a day or every 2 days. I don't remember the details, but anyway, we basically took a version of the radiometer, mounted it under an aircraft, and then flew that over the fields of Winnipeg. And then we had a bunch of university collaborators, students and professors and stuff in the field with soil moisture probes, and they would be taking soil moisture measurements directly, and then we would be flying over and taking it from the aircraft and comparing what the radiometer was measuring to what they were measuring on the ground and calibrating, making sure the radiometer was working essentially. And then we would go fly over a lake because we knew the lake was 100% water. So then we would see what the radiometer measured for that. Um, and that was just a super fun project. We were up there; it was like 6 weeks. And we also there's a company called so Twin Otter is the name of the company, and they actually fit out these. I think it's a DH6. They fit these aircraft out for scientific missions. So if you need an aircraft, you tell them, "Hey, this is what we need. These are the instruments we need to put on board," and then they'll help you integrate your stuff into the aircrafts, and then provide you pilots come and fly it for you, and we basically sitting in the back doing the science while they were flying around. So yeah, those are probably two of the more interesting things that I mean, everything was interesting, but those are two things that that stand out for me.
Well,
Yeah.
that leads pretty well into the next thing I wanted to talk about, which is that teamwork aspect. You talked about working with a variety of different people. You're collaborating with other scientists, engineers. You mentioned being sort of a cross between a engineer, researcher, sort of a tech priest, I guess, if people are interested in Warhammer. But students, university researchers, what's the that collaborative melting pot sort of environment like? You're working with so many different people and having to coordinate. I'm sure there have to be some funny or memorable moments or interesting characters that you can talk about, or maybe with or without a name.
Um, yeah. There's definitely been some characters. I have. It's been an interesting ride. There was one other grad. Actually, it was a postdoc, I think, who was living in the physics department at the University of Illinois for a while. That was kind of interesting. I mean, literally living out of his office in the physics department and cooking his dinner in the microwave. I can't even. He was definitely, but brilliant guy, right? So amazing physicist and mathematician, just a little different. Um, and yeah, and there's definitely been some characters, I think, but you work with people as best you can. Some people, especially in the sciences, can be difficult to work with, but you have to, you're working on a big project, and almost all big, all majors. I don't want to say all major, but much of the major breakthroughs that come in science now are coming from huge collaborations, right? They're multi-billion-dollar projects. They're international collaborations, and you're working with, I forget how many authors there were on the Planck papers, hundreds, like 200 or 300. We were working on a team with Planck was 600 or 700 scientists, and so you have to make the best of it, and kind of meet people where they're at, and figure out how to help them to contribute to the team, and um, uh, how to work together to achieve whatever the goals are. And so, yeah, I mean, there's definitely been some characters. I don't that the guy that lived in the physics department is one that really sticks out to me. I don't remember too many. I'm sure there's loads of others. And if I was here with people from JPL, they'd be like, "Oh, do you remember this and that?" But um, there's so many interesting characters.
And
It's
speaking of characters, Volcano Doc rating in, thank you so much for bringing your class on a field trip to ours. We are here interviewing Nerduino, another educational streamer in the Knowledge Fellowship. Thank you so much, Volcano Doc. We really appreciate you bringing your your class to ours. We were just asking Nerduino about the interesting and colorful caricatures that they've probably encountered in their time at NASA. Um, that also brings me to, I guess, the next question. You've talked about, having to work together, coming together with all these different variety of different individuals, this big diversity of people from universities, the engineering fields, the science fields. And then you talked about one project, not getting funded. So there are these setbacks. Obviously, they're going to happen. What sort of
Yeah.
challenges are we talking about in, this realm where, you might put a year into a project that you start to feel passionate about. You're putting all this work in, and then it doesn't pan out. You don't get to continue working on it. Um, can you talk about that a little bit? The resilience that this can take.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, also, hey, Volcano Dog, good to see you. So I'm lucky enough to have collaborated with Melissa on a couple of different projects. We have a paper. I actually have a paper with Volcano Dog together, and we got to be on the science panel at TwitchCon in Vegas. So that was super cool. Volcano Dog is amazing. So make sure you go follow Volcano Dog if you're not already.
Absolutely.
Um, yeah, I mean, so for me, one of the things that um, I don't work at JPL anymore, right? So at some point, that sort of came to an end. And one of the things that was challenging for me is we sort of talked about how my background is in astronomy, right? I have a PhD in astrophysics in astronomy and cosmology, and that's kind of my area. And after Planck at JPL, I was kind of working on things that were not, the DARE project was kind of astronomy, but I was also working on some of the engineering side of things a little bit with the design of the experiment. And then the Twin Otter thing with the radiometer slung under an aircraft, clearly far outside my area of expertise necessarily. And so it can be challenging to, if you just wanted to do astronomy, I think I would have struggled to find work at JPL just to do the science. And I can't imagine. So there's rumors of 4,000, another 4,000 people getting let go from JPL in the next couple of weeks. I don't know. We'll see whether that it comes to fruition or not. But I think one of the challenges, and for scientists everywhere, is there's this tension between working on what's popular and what people will fund, right, and what people are interested in, and also being able to work on what you're interested in, which may not, those two things may not be the same, right? And so I definitely felt that at JPL towards the end, especially that, you know, I don't really think they knew quite what to do with me either, kind of thing. They're like, well, we've got this kind of smart guy who's useful to have around, but he doesn't really fit it conveniently into any of the boxes that we have available with funding. And so, it ended up being so many different projects that you had to work on to keep yourself fully employed that it became challenging. And I think that's, I think we all feel that here in the streaming world as well, right? You collaborate with people, you stream, you never sort of quite have this feeling of how well it's going. Some streams you have a stream and there's like, I don't know, like 150 people. Other times you have a stream and there's just a few people and you wonder, what did it, is it something I did or what, and I have my numbers off. I don't look at the numbers when I'm streaming, but I know it happens. Um, the JPL layoffs are false for the numbers. Okay, well, it'll be interesting to see. It'll be interesting to see that third rock.
Hopefully so.
Um, yeah, hopefully. Yeah, let's hope. Let's hope. Um, yeah, and so you just have to be persistent, and you have to kind of stick with the mission, and you have to understand. I think you just need a clear vision of what your interests are, and what compromises you're willing to make, right? To be able to say work in academia or in science, and what compromises you just are not going to work for you. And I think as long as you're clear right about that, then you kind of just plow ahead, and you just keep, as you said, you're just persistent, and you keep at it, and have faith that at the end of the day that will be um, fulfilling. I think
I think the
whether it
comparison
will
to
be.
I think the
Sorry.
comparison to streaming is pretty apt because you balance what you think might be popular for people to watch, what you're interested in streaming, and what might actually be the meta or the algorithm friendly stuff. And it is interesting to hear how you go to work at NASA, and it's not like you go in there and they tell you, here's what you're going to be doing. You are looking for work. You're, finding a niche. You're finding, something that you can do as, here's what I'm good at. Here's what I'm, capable of. What can I do? That's not something I've heard before. That's all new
Yeah.
to me. That
Yeah, and I think that so to be fair to NASA and whatever, they there is definitely a lot of support when you first get first 1 to 3 years are pretty well supported, right? They'll look for projects for you, and but it's at the same time it's like everything, right? You sort of expected to stand on your own 2 feet eventually, right? Like as you go from undergrad, from high school to undergrad to grad school, you're sort of learning to learn for yourself and learning to become a generator of knowledge and possibly a teacher of knowledge. And I think it's the same with with NASA. You get there and they'll help you to find your feet and find your niche, as you said, but at some point you have to take responsibility for sort of moving that forward as well. And they have resources to help and stuff, but yeah, it's I mean I actually yeah, so it's I think streaming is harder than that, because streaming is often I mean, there are great groups like TKF, right? And people have stream teams and all this other stuff, but for a lot of the time when you're streaming, you're really on your own. You're generating the content, you're deciding what you want it to be. You're trying to figure out how to find an audience, and it's uh there's less support, I would say, than like somewhere like NASA, where at least they want you to succeed, right? They want you to be successful because they've invested a lot of money into getting you on board and teaching you how everything works and learning the lab. And there are people whose job at NASA is my camera is driving me insane. Hold on, let me see if I can turn off. It's following my hand or something on my face. I don't know what I'm doing but it's tracking me. Um,
and Legion, yes, the Cubbies do have some work to do, but frankly, as a Brewers fan, I don't think they're going to do it. No, I saw too many Cubs fans cheering on the Churio injury, so I think that karma's going to come back and bite them. So yeah, I think the Brewers got this. I think Uke's going to get his World Series this year.
I'm sure no Brewers fan has ever wished ill on a Cubs player. That must be.
No, certainly not me. No.
I've turned off auto tracking. It's still following me around. I don't know what's going on. Um, Sorry for the camera keep moving around, guys. But yeah, so and it's the same in any walk of life, right? You have to sort of just have a clear vision of where you are and where you want to go and how you're going to get there, and then you have to fit the opportunities that come along into that worldview.
Yeah. And I mean, currently right now, certainly not getting very much support from Twitch, things being the way they are. So yeah, I would have to agree with that. This streaming can be harder, certainly. As someone who's started more recently, yeah, this is hard. This is harder than teaching. And teaching is pretty hard. So there just isn't the support, like you said.
I mean, I think with teaching, right, the nice thing with teaching is if you can teach the same course multiple times, once you've done it the first time, you have all your notes, you kind of have a really good idea of how you're going to do it, and you can sort of just rinse and repeat. But you can't really do that with streaming, because you have to
Yeah.
constantly be innovating and coming up with new ideas and new content, and it's yeah, it's challenging, but it's good. It's fun. I enjoy it. I mean, I think in this day and age, the science education and scientific ways of thinking and critical thinking, the more people that we can introduce to that, the better. You know?
Yeah. You can rinse and repeat until your district comes along and tells you can't teach that anymore. Coming from the health teaching world, a lot of that right now, certainly a challenging time to be teaching any kind of health related topics. Uh,
Sure, sure.
but the next thing I was going to talk about is you transition from one field to the next. We talked at the top about your beginning in finance and engineering. Since we're talking about that topic, what would your advice be to the aspiring scientist who's in one field and is sort of realizing, I'm not really into this. I want to do something that's more enriching. I want to do something that's more lofty, aspirational. I want to do science or technology, but they're in another field. They're in finance or something. That nothing wrong with finance. I mean, unless it is BlackRock or something, but that's my personal opinion. Uh, I certainly had that epiphany. I had done my graduate work in kinesiology and I was going to work with athletes. And then I had a brain
Mm.
embolism from COVID and laying there in the hospital
Oh my
thinking,
goodness.
oh my God, am I going to survive? Am I going to be okay? How much am I going to recover? And I had that moment of,
Wow.
wow, I really want to do something a little bit more. Uh, what's the word that I'm looking for that people always say teaching is fulfilling? Uh, I'm going to go back and get my teaching degree and teach. What would you say to someone who's like, I want to do something that's more fulfilling than this 9 to 5 office job, uh, and wondering, especially with the economy the way it is now and the cost of education, what's your advice to someone who's thinking about that?
Yeah, well, I'm glad you're still with us. I'm glad you recovered. That's
Mostly,
crazy. That's a
mostly,
crazy story.
uh, I'm
Well,
mostly here.
I think most of us are only mostly here most of the time. So,
After COVID, yeah, I
but
think
yeah,
we're all sort of just hanging on.
uh, yeah, exactly. Um, yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah. I mean, I think if so, I mean, we could spend a whole stream talking about the cost of college education, and I'm actually not a huge fan of like college for everybody. I think it just becomes an arms race at some point. I don't think a lot of jobs need a college degree. Like if you want to be a tradesperson, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. If your dad's a plumber and you're going to take over the family business and be a plumber, you don't need a college. Why are you going to waste hundreds of thousands of dollars going to college to do that? The trade schools I think should come back, and yeah, like I said, there's a whole conversation we can have about the cost of college, but if we
Yeah,
set aside how much it's going to cost, often in the sciences, if you wanted to go back to grad school, you can find assistantships, so you can either teach, um, or you might be able to get a research assistantship for later down the line that will pay a small stipend and also cover your tuition, which is the bigger thing. So you get a tuition waiver and you get a little bit of money to live off. um, But in terms of like the big picture decisions, um, I think you have to decide. Like for me, I was into astronomy as a hobby, and they sort of famously, and I don't know who they are, but I forget. But somebody famously once said, "Don't make your hobby your job," right? So you've definitely got to consider whether you want to be like an advanced amateur astronomer and have a day job. And I mean, there are astronomers who have a different day job who still do incredible. They're doing research. They're doing incredible astrophotography. They're doing all that in their spare time. And so you have to sort of think about, and I'm just using astronomy as an example. But I mean, I think if you're sure that it's what you want to do, then I would say absolutely go for it. But don't have any illusions about how difficult it can be, because like I was, um, so when I went to the University of Illinois, I took the qualifying. So you get to take the qualifying exams 3 times in the astronomy department. You get to take them when you first arrive. You get to take them at the end of the first year, and you get to take them at the end of the second year. And if you fail all 3 times, then that's the end of your PhD journey. And I think when I first got there, I think I did okay in the astronomy qual. I think I got 40% in the astronomy qual, which sounds like a disaster, but when you find out that I got like 4% in the physics qual, um, that was hard. I spent the next year studying, and I passed both at the end of the first year, so it was fine. But it was definitely a sort of like a sobering thing. I was on academic probation at one point because of the physics, and so it took me, after 5 years away, it took me a solid 12 to 18 months to kind of find my feet again. And it would have been pretty easy to give up at that point. And there were students who, in my grad class was big. I think it was 12, which was quite a big class. And most of those were students who had come straight from undergrad, and so they were a bit younger than me. I was 20, I don't know, like 26 or 27 when I went to grad school. Um, and I think 5 or 6 of us actually graduated with PhDs. So the attrition rate is pretty high, and it can be it can be a real challenge. But if you're persistent and you stick with it, you can definitely achieve your goals and achieve your dreams. And I'm not going to, if you want to go cure cancer or become a doctor, like a medical doctor, it can definitely be done. It can definitely be done. I think some people, like, they get to 30 and they're like, oh, I'm too old. I'm too old to change. I mean, if you're going to work till you're 70, which is not like in an academic field, people often work until they're 70. That's 40 years. You've got 40 years left of your career. So, I think you can, I think you can achieve a lot in that amount of time, right? And I think it's fine if you suddenly are thinking, well, maybe I've had a bit of a false start here in this career. Accounting isn't all I dreamed it was going to be. I want to go and become an astronomer, or I want to go and become a biologist or a geologist. Um, as long as if you have some scientific background, I think you can make the transition. You just have to find the right people to support you as well. That's the other thing. I was lucky in the people that I had helping me make the transition, but it's definitely doable. Um, but yeah, I would just say definitely make sure that you're sure you want to make your hobby your job. That's the only
Yeah,
thing.
for sure. I think that's a good point about the sort of hustle culture that's out there of everyone feeling like they have to monetize those hobbies. They have to, be making money on it. They have to make it a part of their career, or at least a side career. And you don't. You can do citizen science. I had the opportunity to interview Star Strider and CosmoQuest. A lot of great things you can do to contribute to the sciences without being a professional. And like I said, 40 years, that's a lot of time to have, and also to contribute in some way. Even if you're not, you want to cure cancer, that's not a one person job anyway. There's a lot of ways that you can contribute to that. I think that's true. And you talked about the trade schools. I think if we're going to do, say, this is me getting on a soapbox about, free college, but I think that should be included. People should have the choice of saying, I want to do my 2-year trade school. That should be covered. Or you should have the option to say, get your, undergrad. I think that would help. But yeah, if you are considering, if you're out there watching and you're thinking, hey, I'm 30 or 40 and want to go back to school, you can do it. But get your first 2 years at your local community college, save a lot of money.
Yeah, for sure.
Go to
Sure.
You don't need to go to the state university right off the bat. It's smart to get your first 2 years, your gen eds at your community college. Trust me. What was the other thing I wanted to comment on? Yeah, fields that maybe shouldn't need degrees or don't need degrees. A lot of ways that you can contribute to science without a degree. So great point there as well.
Yeah, and there's citizen science now. NASA and the I was about to say NSF, but NSF, they have a ton of really good resources for all kinds of citizen science projects that you can get involved with, from biology to, if you enjoy bird watching, and there are bird censuses that you can take part in, and there's a ton of astronomy stuff that you can do, and yeah, there's all kinds of ways to get involved in the evenings and weekends. And if you're working a good full-time job and you have uh, disposable income, then all those organizations are also always looking for. There's plenty of charitable organizations that you can contribute to, like the American Associate, the AAAS, uh, American Association for the Advancement of Science. There's all kinds of places where you can make donations and make a difference in science without actually having to be the scientist.
Nick Baring makes a good point there as well. A lot of ways to self-study. There's a whole universe of human knowledge available to us. Uh, we have the internet. You can study yourself in a lot of ways, but don't be one of those people that says they're doing their own research when it's just, watching the blogs and YouTube videos of the people you already agree with. Make sure you're actually going out there and doing, your own research and not with AI. Please do real original study and from uh, qualified sources. But yeah, a lot of free college programs out there now too. Free college classes that you can take at Harvard or
Yeah,
Princeton, I
for
believe.
sure. And there's a lot of professors who put their lecture notes or their courses online as well. So you can access those. Uh, those are all good ways to learn, for sure.
Rao says, transform. I've done the research into I've done the reading. Yes, do the reading for sure.
Reading is a useful skill. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's really
and
true.
perishable and unfortunately perishing in the modern world. Literacy is a luxury. As we would.
Yeah, and
Yeah, go ahead.
I so with the streams, I always try and, when we talk about things on stream, I always try and provide the reference to the paper, or like for my YouTube videos, they're always based on some research and published. You have to be a little bit careful about where they're published as well, right? There are now these
Yeah. Mills,
journals
just
which
journal
are
mills.
essentially
Yeah.
just publishing trash. Yeah. But it's and I think that's the nice thing about streaming as well, right? Because people can come, whatever the subject is, whether it's astronomy and they want to come and talk to me, or like Danny for paleontology, or Volcano Doc. There are resources now here where you can come and, hey, I read this paper, I saw this paper in this publication, and you can sort of get somebody who has a background who can be like, oh yeah, that's a good publication, or yeah, and that publication has a bit of a reputation for not necessarily being, so carefully peer reviewed, or um, you have live access. I mean, I'm live 3 times a week. Danny's on every weekday, I think. Melissa's on often. Science Streams is on every day. You've got all these people that you can come and ask, and just get some. You can get some guidance on whether you're heading down the right track, or is what you're reading just kind of um, pseudoscience.
And a story saw recently and then saw poo-pooed by people who are, a little bit more knowledgeable was another story about, oh, there's this cosmic object that's going to come nearly hit the Earth, but then it turned out, oh, it was reported by someone who's notorious for, I don't know this, I don't know who the person is, but I guess they're sort of notorious for exaggerating or bloviating about uh, things like that. So it probably a lot of disinformation and misinformation and hype, similar to the way it is in the health world for me. Constant misinformation, disinformation about health and wellness, and that's why I always put my citations up there. We talked about the flu shot recently in a lesson, and a lot of possibility for trolls and anti-vax people to come in and be like, there's these conspiracies about the flu shot. I'm like, well, let's go to the study. Let's go to the
Right.
science backed. And we're talking about how there's all these resources available online, being judicious about where you look for that information though, because there's good information out there, and then there's stuff that's hype or fads or misinformation, disinformation. Um, so that was going to lead us to the next thing, which is streaming. Another way that people can contribute if they have expertise, if they have some knowledge, like what you're doing, spreading educational science via live streaming. So why did you choose to do that? Why did you start doing it?
Um, yeah. So it was COVID. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. No, it was just the worst of times, really. And I was watching a lot of Twitch. Right, I was at home. My daughter was at home from school. She was homeschooling, and so I was here with her. She was doing classes on Zoom or whatever with her school, and so I was just kind of um, watching a lot of Twitch streams. I was watching a lot of Warzone streams specifically, and I got chatting. I was in someone's chat, and I don't know how it came up, but it ended up like, oh yeah, I used to work at NASA, and some of the people on there were like, oh, you should stream. I think people would be super interested in all that stuff, and I resisted for a few months, and I was like, I don't think it would be interesting, and eventually they browbeat me into submission, and I went live, and had no clue really what I was doing. I can't even remember what I talked about those first few streams. It was basically just me talking to me, and maybe I did have a couple of people from from the Warzone streams who would come and support me, and still do. There are still a few people around from the very early days, uh, and so yeah, and I kind of enjoyed it, and I was like, oh, this is actually kind of fun, and I think I could make it interesting, and yeah, it's just been we've gone from sort of those early hostage video type streams to something which now is getting better. It's getting better after 4 years. It's getting better. It's still not where I would like it to be, necessarily, and I don't always have the time. I have a family and I have other responsibilities. I don't always have the time to put in to make it everything that I would like it to be, but I definitely think it's got better, and continues to get better. And so, yeah, I've watched with sort of horror as science has given way to pseudoscience, and we're at a point now where we don't think that we need to vaccinate our kids against measles and shit that sorry, and stuff that is just, it makes no sense. Like, and the argument is, oh well, we don't have measles anymore. It's like, yeah, we don't have measles anymore because we have a vaccine. What are you talking about? uh and so that has kind of motivated me to do the streams. And I think, people love space, and there's so much cool stuff happening in space and astronomy. And so, yeah, using that as a vehicle to kind of encourage people to think critically and look at science. And we look at papers, and we kind of, I try and um sort of give examples of how to read a paper and how to go through it and sort of determine, even without necessarily understanding everything in it, sort of determine whether it's meets the smell test. Does it meet the sniff test? um and yeah, the sort of the further the further backwards we go as far as science and scientific thinking goes, the more motivated I am to do a better job
Yeah.
here on Twitch and on YouTube, and try and do my part, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, we're at a point now where people are just like flat out, is germ theory really true? And you just hang your head because I just don't even know what to do anymore sometimes. But I mean, that's really exactly what I've been dealing with now, is because in the health and wellness world, it's like
Yeah,
that's ever since COVID, it's just sort of the dam burst for a lot of that sort of disinformation and just a war on science. And it does make what you're doing all the more important. What all these educational streamers are doing all the more important. Having people gain at least a basic literacy on how to read a paper. Is it valid and reliable? Does it meet the smell test, like you said? Um,
yeah,
that's very important, and that's a skill that people are losing, especially as the sciences are more denigrated. And we've been talking about you don't necessarily need college. It would be great if we could teach outside of college that skill of, here's how to read a paper, here's what research means, here's why it's important, here's why it is more likely to be true than your hunch or intuition or feelings. So I really love that there are people who read papers, show people this is what a good paper looks like, rather than the paper that says take this supplement because it will cure your autism or whatever, and it's based on one paper from a sample size of 5. Like, no,
yeah,
please, that's not how science works.
yeah, absolutely. And the other thing I like about it is the interactivity, right? So somebody was just saying earlier in chat, well, isn't most published research wrong? And it's like, oh, actually, that's an interesting point. Now you kind of get to correct things like that in person, in real time. It's like, no, I mean, yeah, all of science is just our best understanding of the facts at this point in time, right?
I'm
So
sorry to interrupt,
tomorrow,
but
yeah,
sorry to interrupt.
sorry,
I want you to continue, but that it's such a great point to point out that if your study doesn't show what you want it to show, that doesn't mean it was wrong. The study isn't wrong. Uh, a negative result is a result. Science is
yeah,
science, whether your hypothesis was true or not. It's all still valid and learning.
yeah, absolutely, exactly, yeah, and yeah, a negative result is a result. And we basically build a consensus on what the facts are, right? And then we test them. We have a theory and we test it, and it either passes the test or it fails the test. And if it fails the test, we go back and uh, we go back and we try again. We adjust the theory and we adjust our hypothesis, and we keep testing until we can find a way forward. And sort of saying, well, that was wrong. So the last thing you thought was wrong, it's like, it wasn't wrong. It was just we were on our way to sort of. We'll probably never get to the sort of this objective idea of truth, right? We'll just get closer and closer and closer. And the way we get closer and closer is by proving old things to have, that there was a problem with this theory, and now we have this theory which is better and stronger and it fits more cases and all that stuff. So I think it's this, but anyway, so just that was that particular point. Is like, no, most published research isn't wrong. It's just a step on the way. It is true that a lot of published research that you read in papers is a few months old or more, because the publication process can be quite slow. Um, but that sort of level of interactivity where people can just chat with you and ask questions, and you can sort of have a discussion. And sometimes people don't like the answer, they storm off. I've had people quit because they're like, this isn't the right stream for me. And it's like, okay, well, that's fine. I try and be welcoming to everybody. I don't necessarily, if people want to, I'm not going to argue with people about pseudoscience, I guess. So if you have a reasonable argument, you're welcome to come and talk about it and present it, and we'll discuss it. But you can't just come in with unsupported sort of accusations. Like, I guess that's when it runs into trouble. That honestly doesn't happen that much. I find most people come in with an open mind, and
No. The moon landing
the
is fake
community.
people. They tend to not want to interact with actual researchers and scientists.
Right.
That sort of thing. And I mean, I've talked about conspiracies, and I can't remember the name of the researcher who did a study on just the impossibility of most of these conspiracies just by sheer numbers. And the old saying, three can keep a secret if two are dead. You would not be able to hide something like that for that long. Um, but yeah, you talked about, we just get closer and closer. As a Wisconsinite, I'm forced to quote Vince Lombardi that, gentlemen, we will chase perfection. We will chase it relentlessly, knowing we will never attain it, but along the way we will catch excellence. So yeah, we're not going to come directly face to face with objective truth, but we will get as close as we possibly can as long as we keep trying. Uh, yeah, absolutely. Gosh, I got thrown off because I was thinking about Vince Lombardi and the Packers. But yes, please continue.
No, I think I was almost done. So we do have, we read on the stream. We have a redeem for Demon Haunted World by Carl Sagan,
Oh yes.
which is such a good book, and I think it gives you a really good sense, and it's becoming more and more relevant. But it sort of gives you a really good sense of why people are drawn towards more pseudoscience, and why, for the reasons that we've discussed. Right, science can be quite unsatisfying, right? Because a lot of the time we do experiments and we're like, well, I don't know, it's a negative result, sorry. And to a scientist, that's like, okay, well, that was a negative result, that's good. I think to a lot of people who, more lay people or whatever, they're less experienced, maybe, they're like, well, that was stupid, we didn't learn anything. And it can be frustrating to see the progress happen so slowly, when you can just create some pseudoscience, nonsense, and just state everything as fact and yell at anybody who disagrees with you. It's a much easier That's a much easier route to take.
Yeah, the selling of science can be hard too because we'll end up with, again, as a Wisconsinite, I have to deal with the fact that we had Scott Walker, who was one of the people who came out and railed against the study about when they put shrimp on treadmills. That's really easy to rail against and say we're wasting our money on this kind of thing, when lay people haven't been sold on why did we do that? Why did we do this study? Well, it wasn't to see how fast shrimp could run on treadmills. It was to test
Right.
what the effect of contaminants in water were on the physical motility of these uh, aquatic life, and how much could they stand before they began dying off and not able to survive, and how that would affect our uh, seafood supply and things that actually matter to people. And the results were actually important, but people don't get that because they hear they put shrimp on a treadmill. That's stupid. Why did we spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on that? So the other problem is, how do we market science to people when we don't necessarily know, is this result going to be negative or positive?
Mm.
You know, what's
Yeah.
the upside? What's the upshot to the taxpayer, for example? That can be really hard.
Yeah, I mean, I was just reading an article. It was super interesting about Bell Labs back in the glory days of Bell Labs. And the whole point of the article was, this Bell Labs, when it went through that, it invented Unix and goodness knows how many other things in the space of a few years. It's essentially what happens when you give a bunch of scientists money and just say, here, go do some interesting stuff. Right. And that can be hard to sell because, like, uh, when and this used to happen at JPL, that some manager would walk past your door and you'd just be sitting there staring into space thinking about something, and they would be like, "Oh, you're working hard?" It's like, "Yeah, I was," until you just interrupted me. Like, I was thinking about something. And it can be hard to, for people to see that, but there is some value, not, you know, there's some value in just letting people sit and think sometimes, I think, and paying them to do that, right? And see what they come up with. And but that can be a hard sell to the public, as you said. Like, well, why we're just funding a bunch of guys to sit around and do nothing? Like, well, it's one way to look at it, I suppose. But yeah, it's the selling can be difficult, and I think recently, and maybe the current whatever you want to call it, situation with science will encourage people to do that more, right? People are having to, scientists are having to, are realizing that I think science communication and science outreach and education has always been sort of looked down upon by the more pure, those who are more inclined towards pure research, because they think, oh well, if you could do research, you would, and if you're doing education, that's because you're not a good researcher and you're not a good scientist. And I think that's a mistake. That's not the right way to look at it. And I think that they are going to have to change that opinion, because as we're seeing right now, you had better be able to sell whatever you're doing to the public, because at some point, when times are good, it's not a problem because you can just do what you can do your thing and no one's really going to bother you. But when we're in a situation like we are now, where everyone's having to justify their existence, if you can't justify what you do to the public, you're going to have a rough time trying to find funding and justifying why your lab shouldn't be shut down. You know.
And what's the first thing to get cut when funding starts to get tight, when the belts start tightening? It's the things that people don't see a direct benefit from. It's the arts, the humanities, it's science research. You know, people don't necessarily see the immediate value there. So, in health, I've interviewed art teachers. Those are the first people to get cut in the education world. And, a lot of the sciences, people don't see the value necessarily in what's going on in outer space because we've got so much going on right here. But hey, I mean, there's a reason we have so many technological advances from those NASA days and
Yeah.
the heyday of NASA. We would not have the kind of a life of luxury and comfort and ease that we have if we weren't investing in those early days in science and technology. And I think it's a good point about the selling. We have to get comfortable with that. Uh, Streamers are comfortable more with like promoting themselves, marketing. At least many of them are. That's something that I've had to get comfortable with. Coming from education, I'm like, I don't want to endlessly market and shill myself. That's not who I am.
Right.
But
Right. Right.
hey, if you're not
Yeah.
willing to do that, if you think you've got something valuable to share with people, how are you going to get people to pay attention?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I've been doing it through the lens of a VTuber, which is a very different world, which really requires a lot of marketing because that's a saturated market. But I thought this is an engaging and interactive way. You talked about the interactivity and how that's so important. Um, that's that's a big draw, but you do have to be able to market it and get people to come in the door, because if they're not coming into your store where you're selling valuable, useful science, you've got a full store of great stuff, but it's not coming off the shelves.
Yeah, exactly. No, and it is, and discovery is hard. Discovery on Twitch is not great. And I know every year at TwitchCon we end up in a conversation with the devs, and they're like, "What can we do? Or can we? What would you improve if you could improve anything at Twitch with Twitch?" And it's always discovery. It's pretty much for me. And like, yeah, there's a few little niggles with some of the tools and a few little bits and pieces that could be done better, but. The main thing is just discoverability. If you watch someone like science streams or volcano no organic paleontologizing or tiny toxic tofu, they have decent viewership, but they get front page on Twitch and they're in the thousands of viewers. So that just tells you that there's an audience for science out there. It's just not finding the streamers.
There's a market. People are hungry for something that isn't slop. Like we talked about at the top, there's a market for people who they want to watch something that has a little bit more value than TikTok AI slop, or oh my god, the was it Meta coming out with a whole new social media platform that's just for AI videos and sharing that. So a whole platform just for
Can't even.
bots to
Yeah.
make and watch bot created content. That's exactly what we need right now. But yeah, fighting that good fight, getting there should be a Twitch creator club for that. There's Twitch creator clubs for all different kinds of other topics. Why not
Mhm.
science and technology or science and education? That would be fantastic, I think. Yeah.
Fluorine boron N2. I'd like to see a good survey of science viewers on Twitch. Actually, Volcano Doc did do that. That was what we published that paper on. I will try and find the link later and post it somewhere on Discord. But yeah, if you look at it's the paper is Scruggs et al. I think. Uh, and yeah, we did try and do a survey of what people, who was watching, what people were watching, and a little bit of demographics and stuff.
Oh, don't worry about original ideas. There's There's nothing new under the sun. I think someone wrote that sometime a long time ago.
Oh yeah, 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 for sure. No, I mean it's good just to be reminded. But and Star Strider are taking it further. Oh, nice, good, 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 excellent. Yeah, that is research that needs to be. I know we didn't get a ton of responses. I don't think. I forget how many, but yeah, that'd be great. I look forward to seeing that in Rocket Sage because I think that can be really useful for people to understand how to target. I mean, that's kind of where my YouTube channel started was just an effort to sort of get the brand out there more. It's turned into its own thing completely, but originally it was just intended to be a place to post, VODs and things, and just let people see the to find the to find the Twitch channel. Now it's its own.
Yeah,
It
even
has a life of
Einstein's
its own.
work, even Einstein's work, as Nick says, was derivative of Newton and Galileo. We all come from somewhere. A lot of it comes from the ancient Egyptian cosmologists. A lot of it goes back to their early work. But yeah, your thoughts may not be original, but they are necessary. They are important. We want to hear it. Uh,
Yeah, and it's just the discussion, right? That's what we're all here for is the discussion and whether we can. I mean, I would say that we rehash the same topics on my stream at least once a week. I probably repeat myself at least 5 times a week. It's like, but that doesn't make it any less interesting. And there's always somebody new around or somebody with a new idea or a new thought to add that makes it interesting, even when you're talking about old ideas.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So let's get to something a little bit more casual, a little bit more fun. We got some serious weeds there. You're in the space world. What's your favorite night sky memory or uh, cosmic body or celestial event? Give me something fun, something that you find is your favorite thing.
Um, I'm gonna have to say, and I don't have a good Andromeda, the Andromeda Galaxy, M31. It's actually visible with the unaided eye, um, but through a telescope, it looks spectacular. And if you and doing some imaging of it, it's just incredible. So it's incredible to me that there's this you can see it right there, and it's this whole other galaxy, billions of stars. I don't know. I just like it, but I like a good Saturn or a good Jupiter as well, and the moon is always spectacular. Like I love it all. But yeah, M31 is probably my favorite object, night sky object.
It's a
In fact, I
solid
think
choice.
Third Rock Astronomy. I think Third Rock Astronomy just did a big, or is in the process of making a mosaic of it. But yeah,
Bilo says
it's
go Brewers. Oh, thank you so much. I couldn't agree more.
banned.
Mars is a great choice. Legion. I have to say, I was
Mars, yep.
a Venus fan. Now I'm Jupiter. I think it's just incredible. We have this massive swirling gas planet right so close to us in our own solar system. I think I was just sort of biased towards Venus because I got all my early solar system knowledge from Sailor Moon. So that's you know I don't know how many other people share that experience, but yeah, Saturn is great. The rings, but Jupiter, yeah, fantastic. Uh, what's the other fun thing that we should mention? Oh yes, what's your favorite go-to sci-fi book, show, or movie? What's your favorite sci-fi property?
Um,
Because I did this with
well,
Noodles and with Dr. Pamela.
um, I'm gonna say for so yeah, I have a couple. Lord of the Rings, I would say it's not that's technically fantasy, not sci-fi, but I would say Lord of the Rings is a solid like I can go back and read those books over and over and over. But if it's like if the question is Star Wars or Star Trek or some variation of
Battlestar
that,
Galactica, something like that. Yeah.
Battlestar Galactica, yeah, Deep Space Nine, all that stuff. I'm a Star Wars junkie. Yeah, more so. I enjoy Star Trek. I remember the original Star Treks with William Shatner and all that. And I enjoyed those, but yeah, I think Star Wars. It's gone a little off the rails, but yeah. If I had to pick one universe, it would be Star Wars.
I think that tracks with your first instinct was to say Lord of the Rings. So I think that's sort of the great, sort of in between. Star Wars is sort of that in between of fantasy and the sci-fi.
Right,
So I think that tracks.
right. But I have some other like I liked Serenity. I like the movie Serenity. I like
Ooh, yeah,
Firefly.
yeah.
Um, some of that stuff. And what was the other one with? I just was watching it the other day. I like The Expanse too. I thought The Expanse was really well done. I got a little, I drifted off about 5 seasons in, but but I really enjoyed the early seasons of that.
Yeah, I'm a huge Trek guy myself. I go back and watch TNG all the time. Uh,
Uh,
the technobabble gets a little bit much, but yeah, I think Firefly slash Serenity, that's a little bit, it's probably more realistic to what it might come to in the future. The sort of grimy, gritty, dirty human experience of being in space. It's not going to be the, luxury liners of Star Trek. I don't think we're going to get there.
yeah, I mean maybe not anytime soon, but I actually just I don't know if you know there's a I think it's called Dust. There's a YouTube channel which is all sci-fi shorts made by different like little indie sci-fi shorts. And I've really been enjoying some of those. Yeah, it's called Dust, and some of those are really good. Some of them are really weird, but some of them are really good. So I've been delving into that. They're like somewhere between 7 and 15 minutes. Uh, so yeah, if
That's kind of the
recently
sweet
that's the
spot
yeah
for content right now.
yeah. I mean the attention span of the average human is it's pretty short. Me included. I'm not criticizing anyone. Like
All right. So our next sort of fun question then. Uh, what's the biggest or most pervasive sort of myth or pop culture belief that people have about space that is totally wrong? What do people get wrong about space
oh,
or say sci-fi? What do they consistently get wrong about space that sort of irks the astronomer slash space scientist?
oh gosh, I think most of us suspend our like if you just sat there nitpicking the whole time, you wouldn't enjoy the movies. So I think most of us suspend our disbelief when we're watching. Um, I don't know. I mean, it's got pretty good. It's got pretty good. There's so much different stuff, but a lot of the sci-fi has got really good uh, with the sort of some of the details. Um, I I mean like things like Star Trek where the ship is just they're just like going through space and they're not they appear to just have gravity that they can turn on and off. Um, that's a little I find that a little jarring. But then, some of them do a really good job where they have the rotating part of the spacecraft that's creating a some sort of artificial gravity and all that. So I don't know. I mean, but yeah, the gravity thing. It's so difficult though, right? Like if you can imagine can you imagine Star Trek if all the characters were just floating around all the time? Like it would be it would be yeah, so
I do
probably
like
that.
when when sci-fi properties do try to make a point of that. They'll address sort of an elephant in the room. I remember reading in the Ender's Game books. The author was writing about the challenge of long range communications. We think, oh, a ship can just communicate to another ship instantly. Like, no, we're talking about light years and light years and light years away. It's going to take
Yeah.
decades and decades to reach there. And they came up with a creative sort of science sounding solution, even if it's not real science. At least they're sort of thinking outside the box. And in some cases, art imitates life, and life imitates art. And people get ideas from Star Trek, and we end up with flip phones. And God, flip phones are
Yeah.
what, 20 years old now
Yeah.
too. Jesus.
Yeah. 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 I know. Uh
All
But
right,
yeah,
so
I
we've
also enjoy, I also enjoy some of the more like Project Hail Mary I enjoyed that book because it was sort of a lot of the science was a little bit more accurate as well. Like he focused on making that somewhat realistic, which was nice. So if anyone's looking for a good book, Project Hail Mary, recommend.
have an anonymous gifter gifting out subs. Fantastic. Thank you for
Oh,
contributing to
five gifted. Thank you
Nerduino's
for the five
community.
gifted anonymous. I appreciate you.
Oh, mobile phones are going to be a thing of the past, Chris. Yeah, probably. We'll probably just be wired right into our head. I'm not looking forward to that. What's the tweet about? We were not meant to know this many people's thoughts, let alone, or we were not meant to know this many people exist, let alone their thoughts. Yeah, I think we are in a bit of a information overload. I don't necessarily need to know every person's thought at all times, but that's what social media is. Uh, I guess I do have one other sort of streaming related question. You talked about how you've been using YouTube. You've expanded into putting content there as well. Um, do you multi-stream, or is it just streaming to Twitch and then like VODs and edited videos, produced videos later on YouTube?
Almost all my YouTube content now is produced videos just for YouTube. Or
Okay.
I post them on Instagram and YouTube. But yeah, those are specifically made just for YouTube. And actually, very rarely post VODs, or I'll sometimes post a little short, like if there's a little clip or something from a video from stream. But it's essentially two separate endeavors at this point. The place where it sort of does spill over is that a lot of the stories I talk about in the videos, I will go into a lot more detail on stream about those same stories. So it's kind of nice in that I can use the prep work for the YouTube videos as the basis for streams as well.
Have you been doing
Um,
any? I didn't check, I didn't see beforehand, but do you do short form content like TikTok or Instagram or
so
YouTube
all the
Shorts
all
type?
the YouTube videos are shorts actually.
Okay.
Yeah. And I was posting the shorts to TikTok for a while, but it just was the shorts were getting somehow like shadow banned
Mm.
essentially. So they were, the shorts would get 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 views. Then all of a sudden, for 2 weeks, they'll get one or two. So it was clear that the videos were being sort of hidden from people's feeds for reasons that I have no idea. Like there was never any official thing. So I kind of gave up on TikTok. And so now I post the shorts. I post the shorts on Instagram and YouTube, and I don't mess with TikTok anymore. Um, and in answer to your question about the streaming, I have not. I keep meaning to try the dual streaming with between Twitch and YouTube. I just haven't got around to setting up the things I need in OBS. It's just finding the time. But I would like to try that. I know some people who do that. Um, I don't. Yeah, it may be a way to reach a new audience. So
Yeah, I think a
do
lot of
you have
app
you tried
users.
the?
Yeah, I've started using the multi-stream capability, and I've found that YouTube does have its sort of audience for this sort of content. Not
Uh huh.
necessarily as many people who are interested in the interactivity. I think that's Twitch is sort of a thing people go to for interactivity. They
Uh
expect to be able to interact with the gamer or the streamer, whereas YouTube, even people who watch the live content, they are more passive watchers, which is
I
perfectly
see.
fine. Great to have anyone who wants to learn something, but yeah, I would say that's sort of the key difference between the two.
Uh huh. Okay, it's
It's
interesting.
still
Yeah, I
useful.
do want to give it a try though.
YouTube is great for quick review. Florine says, yeah, that's the other thing is that it doesn't have the limitations of how many videos you can actually host there, and Twitch has a extremely small amount of space you can actually post things to.
Yeah,
So that's one other benefit. However,
that's interesting.
yeah, and then the
Um,
ads too. It's easier to ad block on YouTube. Well, depends on how much money you're trying to make as a streamer.
yeah, well, that's a whole other thing. Monetization is I don't even know. Like it's I mean, I have some really supportive uh a really supportive community, and there's lots of people that subscribe and support the channel, and it's really great. But if I was trying to make a living, enough money to live, like to pay a equivalent of a salary, I don't know, it would be a struggle, I think.
Yeah, content creator is one of the top 10 student dream jobs. They really don't they really don't see the big picture there. That there's like maybe a handful of people who can actually make a living doing it. You're probably better off going the traditional classic. I want to be a pro athlete if you're a kid. To be perfectly honest with you, rather than trying to make money as a streamer.
Yeah, I think it's so there's this thing in sales organizations, right, where it's usually true that the top 10% of the salespeople make 90% of the commissions. And I suspect that something similar is true for streaming, that the top 10% of streamers are making 90% of them, or possibly even more of the money. And everyone else is fighting over the little bit.
Yeah, the rich get
But I think
richer.
that's okay. Yeah, I think that's okay. You know, I'm not necessarily here to it would be nice eventually to have it turn into a salary, but at the same time, that's not my primary reason for being here. So the educational aspects and the just the education and outreach in the community now as well. Like it's fun just to come hang out with. It's fun to come hang out with the regulars on stream.
For sure. And what
It's
are you
like
doing
I don't.
recently? What do you have coming up in the next couple of
Well,
cycles?
TwitchCon.
TwitchCon coming
TwitchCon's
up.
coming up. Yeah, TwitchCon on the 17th through the 19th. We're organizing a beach cleanup during TwitchCon. Actually, if people are interested, here there's a command in chat. 7 a.m. on the Friday of TwitchCon at Ocean Beach in San Diego. We're going to go do a beach cleanup, hang out with a bunch of science streamers, other streamers, chat, whoever. Anybody's welcome. Come and help us clean up the beach, and we'll get back. We'll be back to the convention center in plenty of time for TwitchCon. And so yeah, that's exciting. And then I'm looking forward to hanging out with Casey Snowart's in chat, and we're looking forward to hanging out with Casey Snowart. She's going to be there. Science streams, paleontologizing, finite singularity. A bunch of friends who I've seen at other Twitch cons from before, and who I know from on stream. Uh, it's yeah, it's just great. I'm not a con person. I'm not really a big crowd of people as my as my wife will tell you. Like me, I don't go. They have an annual trip to Disney, and I don't typically go because I can't cope with the lines and the crowds. And so the idea of going to TwitchCon was sort of, I was like, I don't really want to do that, but it was right down the road, and it's a couple of hours drive, and Science Streams talked me into going the first year, and it was great. I had a really good time, and yeah, this will be my fourth year of going, and it's been great. I was on a NASA panel last year. I was on a science panel with Mahoodles, Volcano Doc, paleontologizing and science in Vegas. That was great, and yeah, it's just a good time, and it's good to meet people. And but yeah, anyone wants to come to the beach cleanup, that would be great. Other than that, it's just going to be streaming as usual until then. I'm hoping to do some IRL stuff from TwitchCon, and then yeah, we'll be getting into the holiday season. I'm hoping to have some guests. My thesis advisor has said that he's happy to come on stream, so I'm hoping to have him come and talk about. He's a fancy professor of astronomy and astrophysics now, so he's going to talk to us about his research and what he's been up to. And I have a couple of science journalists who I have lined up to come on stream. So we have some really good guests coming up. I just have to make the schedule and make it happen. And
Easier said
then
than done.
yeah, it's I actually need like an assistant maybe I just need Alexa or somebody to organize this stuff for me.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
A manager. Hey.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and then we have the next Starship test flight is in a week on the 13th. So that'll be a fun stream as well. The launches are always fun.
Thank you very
That's it.
much,
Then
Legion. I appreciate it.
it'll be the
Oh, and
holidays.
Melissa in Denial will be going this year too. I'll be on Melissa's channel next week on the 10th. I'll be talking with her about supplements and what the ancients knew, what they used
Oh,
to take, what
nice.
they used to believe worked, whether it was ritualistic purposes or what they did understand or didn't understand about, you know, the herbal supplements, the traditional remedies, folk healing, that kind of thing. We'll be talking about that and what things actually hold up today, what we still take today that still works. So that'll be a lot of fun too. Looking forward to working with Melissa as well. And yes, go
She's
support
great.
the
Yeah,
beach cleanup. Definitely. Because public works and government not necessarily always doing that job properly.
yeah. Melissa's great. I don't think I've met Melissa in person, but we've chatted online. She's somebody I'd like to meet at TwitchCon. So we'll make sure that happens. That'd be great. Sometimes it's just super. It's nice to put a face to a name.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many great streamers in this great organization, Knowledge Fellowship. Again, if you're out there and you're watching, and if you're not following the stream team, you should make sure to check that out. Make sure you're following Nerduino if you're not already following Nerduino. Lots of great educational streamers that you can check out in basically every kind of field. There are people who do programming. You can get live math help if you are having trouble with your college physics, your college calculus. There are streamers out there who will literally have office hours where you can get math help. History streamers, people who talk about art. I was watching Mr. Horologist not too long ago.
Oh
You
yeah,
can watch someone
it's great.
make and repair watches. It's just one of the most calming, uh, wonderful things you can watch. But yeah, every kind of subject you can imagine, there's someone out there streaming probably right now about that topic. So yeah, there's
Oh, for
my
sure.
renewed plug for TKF. Uh, so I don't have any other specific questions, but I want to thank you for taking this time. This was fantastic. This was a different format than some of the others, so I appreciate your sort of patience with us getting this set up at the beginning with the scuff that always happens with any kind of stream team. Kevin Does Chemistry says that they can do calc. They can help you with your calculus homework. Great, because I don't want to help you with that. I can't help you with that, Rao.
Yeah,
But yeah,
no,
thank you
listen,
so much.
thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it, and thanks for thinking of me and having me on and doing such a great job with the tech and with the interview and everything. And it's been super fun. And yeah, go make sure you go follow the Knowledge Fellowship and the stream team and check out some of the great streamers there, and also the Discord if you're interested in the Discord. We have a very active Discord as well. So yeah.
Tons of people. Yeah, and you can follow the Knowledge Fellowship's socials as well if you want to get announcements for when people are going live. So if you want to see when Nerduino is going live, you can follow the uh, socials. You'll get announcements there. We are looking to expand, so we are taking, of course, applications. If you are interested in becoming a Knowledge Fellowship streamer, drop a application. Why not? Join the Discord, and we can help promote you. I would love to have, if you are an educational streamer, maybe you should be on this channel in this hot seat where Nerduino is sitting right now, so I can help you promote your channel and your great content. Yeah, thank you
Highly
to
recommend
everyone
it.
in the chat. Kevin Does Chemistry, Casey Snow Art, Legion, Florine, Wombat, so many others who were attentive. I appreciate all of your time and attention here. I think Nerduino has ads coming up, so perfect time for us to, I guess, take our little field trip. Let's take our field trip. Let's see what, before we go though, as the good talk show host should do, let us know when you stream so that they can be ready.
Yep. So Tuesdays, Sundays, and Thursdays at 6 p.m. currently. And then if there's launches like the Starship launch, we'll cover that as well. So I generally put out a schedule each week, and you can find that in my Discord. Let's see. Discord. You love the sweatshirt, nice Legion. I'm glad you enjoyed that. Yeah, there is a merch store as well if you want some nerd shirts. I have this. So there's a version of this one that I'm wearing here. We'll just do this. Oh no, the stupid camera. The stupid camera. I'm gonna physically force it. So
There you go.
there's this. Uh, I don't know. I have
Oh,
everything turned off on that camera. I don't know why it's still trying to track me. But anyway, it's my own
Mercury,
fault.
sweetest of the transition metals. That's a reference that no one's going to get. I'm sorry. I'm a child of the 90s. Nobody's going to get that Aquatine or C Lab 2021 reference. Stop making those old references, Mr. Aegis. Anyway, yeah, make sure you're following Nerduino, follow the Knowledge Fellowship Twitch channel, join the Discord. We're going to take our little field trip to Schnaf. Schnaf is streaming right now. They are a music teacher. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Everyone, make sure you're getting some good sleep tonight. Remember to wash your hands. 1 in 3 people don't wash their hands after they use the restroom. That's disgusting. Don't be one of those people. We'll see you next time. Class dismissed. See y'all.